whenever you're ready.
Okay. Everybody ready? Yes. One quick thing. You all look beautiful today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to introduce Heather Shapter. My name is Doug Quinn, and I'm one of many Sandy survivors who are still struggling to get back home. I was cheated by my flood insurance company and the engineering firm they hired to do their dirty work. What should have been a simple process of filing for my insurance claim that I had paid premiums for and getting the money to rebuild my home turned into a never-ending nightmare that has consumed my life, all of our lives. I'm here today with my fellow New Jersey Organizing Project members who fought so hard for our communities. We fought FEMA, we fought the insurance companies, we fought the REM program, we fought crooked contractors, predatory banks trying to take our homes away through foreclosure. We've struggled for years to rebuild our homes while our savings evaporated and debt piled up. Even people who did the right thing and found enough money to rebuild their homes got clawback letters from the state demanding tens of thousands of dollars that they just don't have. We've been all alone. Everywhere we turned for help, there was nothing. And there's a couple people in this room who are some of the only people that have our back. Senator Booker, Congressman Pallone, and most of all, United States Senator Robert Menendez. Senator Menendez has been our one-man 911 fund. Every time there was a problem, we called him. Every single time, he's come through for us, for Sandy victims and the state of New Jersey. And so I want to thank you, sir, for being a light in the darkness for us. Every year on the Sandy anniversary, we watched former Governor Christie get up and do a victory lap and brag about what a great job he was doing getting people home. We had no idea who he was talking about because it certainly wasn't us. This year, it's a new Sandy anniversary. We have a new governor. There's a new start, a new collaborative attitude to bring humanity and compassion back into the recovery process. We're going to work together and get everybody home. Our goal is to get all of our citizens home and put Sandy behind us so we can start working to build a better New Jersey for our families to thrive in. And now, sir, that I've set the bar really high for you, I want to introduce the leader of the great state of New Jersey, Governor Phil Murphy.
All right. Thank you, man. Thank you, so much. Thank you. I feel like just saying, ladies and gentlemen, Senator Bob Menendez. There is a rumor that somewhere in heaven, my late father and late big brother are still out on an all-night bender as charter members of the Red Sox Nation. Easy. Doug, thank you. Before I jump into the topic at hand, I want to just quickly note that today is the day in which New Jersey's paid sick leave law takes effect. Starting today, the roughly 1.2 million New Jerseyans who were not offered a paid sick day by their employers, by the way, nearly 40% of our private sector workforce, will no longer have to choose between going in when they're too sick to work or not getting the day's pay. By providing this right that so many of us take for granted, I'm certain that we will see both greater worker morale and productivity and a healthier workforce and families. This remains the right thing for our working families and for our economy. For this law to take effect at the beginning of the flu season wasn't part of our initial plan, but the timing couldn't be better. Allowing workers to take a sick day is also a matter of protecting public health. Simply ask any restaurant worker or child care worker. New Jersey is once again proudly leading, and we are leading by example to make our state stronger and fairer for all of our families. It is a distinct honor to be here, to be back in Union Beach. I want to give a shout out in absentia to Mayor Paul Smith. Thank the council for welcoming us so graciously. I'm honored, as always, to be with Senators Menendez and Booker, Congressman Frank Pallone, Sheila Oliver, not only the Lieutenant Governor, but the DCA Commissioner, and that's the important point here, wanted to be here today, but she's attending a funeral, so keep her in your prayers. Doug, thank you, man, not just for setting the bar high, but for being with us this morning, for sharing your story, and for your advocacy on behalf of your fellow Sandy survivors, and to everybody who's a part of the New Jersey Organizing Project. I know for you and Toms River and for families here in Union Beach and up and down the shore, it has sometimes felt as if over the past 6 years you were shouting into a well, and today your voice is being heard at long last. Over the past 6 years, we have watched our shore communities rise back up from the destruction left by Superstorm Sandy. Homes were raised or rebuilt to stronger standards. Streets and infrastructure were repaired. Schools and businesses reopened. The shore's boardwalk economies rolled back to life. Much of that was because of the tireless work of our congressional delegation to make sure our federal government rolled up its sleeves to help us rebuild. Again, I particularly thank Senator Menendez, Senator Booker, and Congressman Pallone, the dean, I might add, of the shore delegation, and who represents Union Beach. Because of their work, Congress passed the initial $60 billion Sandy relief bill. And again, on this one, I don't know where we would be without Senator Bob Menendez. Everyone has to understand the centrality of the role that he played. He championed, along with Senator Booker and Congressman Pallone, a law that stopped flood insurance costs from skyrocketing, saving New Jersey homeowners approximately $50 million in premiums. Additionally, Senator Menendez pushed FEMA on its underpayments to impacted families and delivered an additional $260 million in flood insurance funds to the families who are entitled to them. Senators Menendez and Booker and Congressman Pallone have delivered millions of dollars in needed federal Sandy relief funds to our communities. I thank them again for their hard work and dedication to protecting our families. Guys, well done. Today, this community, like every Sandy-impacted community, exemplifies the spirit of New Jersey and the spirit of neighbors working together toward renewal. But certainly, Union Beach still retains the scars that remind us of the worst of Sandy. For example, while there are 330 finished homes here, 56 in Union Beach alone remain unfinished. That's 56 families still waiting to write the end of their Sandy story. That's 56 too many, and they are why we are here today. We can congratulate ourselves all we want on the rebuilding, and we certainly thank the many organizations, state and local officials, construction workers, and others who played a role. However, we cannot stop until every family in every impacted community is once again able to walk back through the doors of their homes. I mentioned 56 in Union Beach. The number statewide is about 1,200 families, 1,200 families, 6 years later, who remain out of their homes. We must get them back in. And that mission is what brings us together today. Today, we're taking 2 steps to clear this final hurdle. Number 1, we are announcing the creation, through the Department of Community Affairs, of a new zero-interest, uncapped, forgivable loan fund through which qualified homeowners who have already maxed out their $150,000 grant awards could seek the additional funds needed to finish the work on their homes. Yeah. The $50 million in funding will come from a rededication of as yet undistributed federal Sandy HUD funds. In other words, we could do this at no cost to the state or to taxpayers and without impacting any existing recovery projects. Second, we're going to take a new approach to working with families being asked to repay over disbursements, which is a diplomatic phrase for clawbacks they had received through the Reconstruction, Rehabilitation, Elevation, and Mitigation, or, as we all know it, the REM program. We are announcing a freeze on new recoupment requests effective immediately. You might ask why I'm waiting until this date to announce this, because in fact, since our administration took office in January, DCA has not made any formal requests for any recoupments. We've actually technically frozen them since January 16th, but we're memorializing that and formalizing it today. Now, during this formal freeze, DCA, in addition to this, will revise its policies to make it clear to families who are simply following the guidance they have been given in Sandy's wake that we are going to work with them and take their family's actual and current financial situation into account. We will work with them to assess their needs and create a plan that works for them. Some families facing hardship may even see some of or all of their debt wiped clean. In every case, however, New Jersey will no longer employ collection agency tactics. And DCA will formalize the details of this new policy in a process that listens to the voices of Sandy's survivors. For too long, these decisions have been made behind closed doors. That era is over. We must make it clear to the families still rebuilding from Sandy that they aren't going to be forgotten. It is all too easy to think that we're back entirely from the havoc Sandy wreaked on our shore communities, and many others, I might add, across our state. But the survivors still trying to get back into their homes tell a different story. They've been waiting a long time, 6 years. Where they had run up against a faceless bureaucracy, they will now be met with real people ready to help. We will show them compassion as we show our resolve to complete the recovery process. And with Senator Menendez, Senator Booker, Congressman Pallone, and our entire delegation, we will continue to fight for them in Washington. It is way past time, 6 years to be exact, that we did so. It is now my honor to introduce the senior senator from the great state of New Jersey, Senator Bob Menendez.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Governor. And Governor, in our lives in public service, sometimes we wonder if what we do really makes a difference in people's lives. What you just announced is going to make a real difference in people's lives and finally get people back in their home. Thank you, Governor, for what you're doing. I appreciate it a great deal. As we join here, I also want to recognize the firefighters. This is an all-volunteer fire department, and they faced extraordinary challenges on Sandy and since, and we are using their house right now, so I want to recognize them and thank them for their incredible service. 6 years have passed since that fateful day that changed so many lives. We all remember the physical devastation, the homes destroyed, the roads flooded, the electrical lines toppled. But what I remember most vividly, the thing I'll never forget for so long as I live, is the look in the eyes of survivors that I met and spoke to as I toured the aftermath of the storm. Without a word, one look in their eyes told me everything I needed to know. Their eyes told me a story of shock, of loss, and fear being pushed aside by determination, hope, and resolve. While we all knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, I don't think anyone imagined it would be quite this long and difficult. But no matter how hard it got, no matter how impossible the odds seemed at the time, we never gave up. Now, some politicians showed up and were all fleeces and photo ops. They ran ads at the boardwalk declaring mission accomplished, donated to the same congressional Republicans that tried to block Sandy aid when I and the late Senator Frank Lautenberg were arguing on the Senate floor for Sandy aid. I've always voted for disaster relief in our country. Flooding in the Mississippi, Hurricane Katrina, wildfires in the West, there's a reason we call this country the United States of America. We're in it together. So I was shocked when for the first time in the state's history we needed disaster assistance that we were being pushed against by some of our Republican colleagues. All the while, homeowners were getting defrauded by insurance companies and having their paperwork lost by the state's rebuilding program. But I didn't leave. When the cameras left, I stuck by New Jersey families. When Tea Party Republicans in Congress blocked disaster relief funding, we fought back. We refused to back down, and we bought the region $60 billion to rebuild. When flood insurance premiums were set to skyrocket just months after Sandy, I wrote and passed a law to stop these hikes, saving New Jersey homeowners nearly $50 million in premiums. And perhaps appropriately, the very first piece of legislation that Senator Booker signed on to when he joined me in the Senate was exactly that law to stop these hikes. It was incredibly important, and he has been fighting with me at my side ever since, 100% of the time on these issues. And we've had a real champion in the House, someone who knows the shore area better than anybody in our state, and someone who is tireless, and Congressman Frank Pallone. I appreciate everything that he has done as well. When Sandy survivors came to me with horror stories of being lowballed by their insurance companies, paying them pennies on the dollar, I led a Senate investigation that uncovered vast systemic fraud and abuse and got homeowners an additional $260 million that they were entitled to. And I appreciate many of them who are here, and Doug, who's speaking today for them. Doug is a Marine who served his nation. The last thing that he needed was to have his nation turn his back on him and his family when they needed it the most. So, Doug, thank you for what you've been doing. I appreciate it. When FEMA threatened to close out the increased cost of compliance, or the ICC program, before Sandy survivors could access it, I pushed for an extension and got us an additional 4 years of eligibility. When the Christie administration implemented a system that was backwards and full of needless delays, I got them to reform it to enable homeowners to get assistance and rebuild quicker. And now that we have a productive partner in the governor's office, we're working with Governor Murphy to reallocate federal Sandy dollars to homeowners who still need help getting back in their home. This governor is committed to finishing the job and righting the wrongs of the past. He's moving unspent federal dollars 6 years later, after Sandy, using it to help New Jerseyans get back home. The 1,200 or so New Jerseyans still in the state of rebuilding their lives and their homes have been through hell and back again. Some were defrauded by their building contractor. Some lost tens of thousands of dollars in attorney fees fighting for what they deserved from their insurance company in the first place. And some were paralyzed in fear of dreaded clawback letters. Clawback letters that I would add, it's not that these people used the money in an inappropriate way. They used it to rebuild their homes and their lives. They followed the rules as they were told, and all of a sudden we changed the rules. You don't claw back people in the midst of that. But while their circumstances may be different, the one thing they share is that none of this was their own fault. They didn't choose to get hit by the worst natural disaster in our state's history. They didn't choose to get underpaid by their insurance companies. They just wanted to go back to life like it was on October the 28th, 2012, the day before the nightmare began. So when I look into the eyes of real heroes of Sandy, the Doug Quinns, the Krista Spurbers, the Carol Ferriolis, and so much others, I know that we'll never stop fighting until everyone is back home. Some call me stubborn. I say persistent. Maybe that's the Jersey in me. But I can tell you that I'll continue to spend every single day, write every single bill, cast every single vote, call every single hearing till we get each and every one of our fellow New Jerseyans back at home. And someone who I know has already joined me in that effort and couldn't be a greater champion for what we need to do is my colleague, Senator Cory Booker.
So before I shift to the subject of the press conference, I just want to say to the governor and to those legislative leaders who finally have taken New Jersey into the 21st century. We live in a strange planet. We're the greatest nation on the planet Earth, but yet the Congo and Afghanistan have paid family leave, but the United States of America doesn't. I live in Newark, and I see families in my neighborhood who work full-time jobs, catch extra shifts where they can. And when you see some of the friends I have, I wrote about one woman in my book who, struggling paycheck to paycheck, working in an IHOP across the street from University Hospital, her child is in the emergency room with an asthma attack and literally has to go through the most god-awful calculation, Governor, about whether I stay at work to get a paycheck, I need to stay, keep a roof over my head, or do I cross the street and be there for my frightened child who's having an asthma attack? That is unconscionable that this was the reality in New Jersey until this governor, with legislative leaders, changed it and brought us forward. So, Governor, I am so grateful today. Thousands and thousands of New Jerseyans rejoice today in what you all have done. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And then I want to thank the governor, and all I'm going to do is say some thank yous and get out of the way. I just want to thank the governor for what he did today, what we're announcing today. I cannot believe we have gone through this process where New Jerseyans have been hit by two storms. The actual Sandy storm, and then we're hit with a blizzard of bureaucracy and hucksterism and people just being feasted upon by every single way that they could be taken advantage of. It was so unfair what folks in this state have struggled with. All they wanted was to be made whole. And what Senator Menendez and I were witnessing and had to fight for, I was a mayor when this hit, when the storm hit, a mayor. I didn't get elected until a year after Sandy. And when I got into office, we were working every single day, still trying to help families, day after day as the years clocked on. And here we are 6 years later, and there are still families who are suffering, struggling, being taken advantage of, hurting, and that's got to stop. And today is a glorious day that goes a long way in doing that. And Governor, God bless you. God bless your leadership, and thank you, sir. And then I want to say this, and we should not have a press conference. We should probably have his picture up here. Please remember Frank Lautenberg. Please remember what he did. I wasn't a senator then. Don't give me credit for what Bob Menendez and Frank Lautenberg did. In the worst of environments, with Tea Party people who turned their back on their fellow Americans, Frank Lautenberg and this guy stood in the well of the Senate and fought and fought and fought two street fighters from Hudson County and Passaic County in the bowels of the United States Senate in the Capitol, fighting to make sure that this region got 60 billion plus. I mean, that Frank Lautenberg, God bless, his legacy lives on today, and I want to give him credit for what he did. I want to thank Brother Pallone, because we have a bicameral system, and what he did over there in a heroic way was also extraordinary, and he deserves a lot of credit. Would you please give him one more round of applause? Just two more thank yous, I'm out of the way, but I have learned in life that hope is the active conviction that despair will not have the last word. Hope is the active conviction that despair will not have the last word. And the champions of hope really are the local leaders and the residents themselves who never, ever gave up. Who never gave up. And Doug, you are so emblematic to me of this, because you are a righteous badass. You are really, really emblematic of like, you are so Jersey. If we cut you right now, you would bleed Jersey. And I just think you are emblematic of a lot of the other leaders I met that have that same grit, that same determination. They may face a defeat, but they are never defeated. They may get knocked down, but they're never knocked out. That's the folks who deserve the thanks, as well as the local leaders, the local mayors, the local activists who did things. And then the final person I just want to thank, because I have witnessed this now for 5 years of my life. On October 31st, just days from now, will be my 5th anniversary as a United States Senator. I was sworn in on the auspicious day of Halloween. And I have had partners so many points in my life, from starting in like my quarterback in high school football and me. I mean, great partners. I can go all the way through the jobs I've had. There has been no greater partner in my life who's not just been a partner, but been a mentor, not just been a mentor, but has been an inspiration. And that is my senior senator, Bob Menendez. Yeah. I'm telling you right now, I wish every New Jersey resident knew what I knew, could see what I see, day in, day out. I have seen this man work and sweat and fight. I have seen him cry. I have seen him love this state in a way that would inspire every New Jerseyan. One of my favorite moments in the Senate. I have legions of these stories, and we don't have time. I'll get out of the way after this one. I am literally in the Senate, in the cloakroom, when another Democrat, because they were having a disaster in their state, realized how hard it is to achieve what he achieved, to get money out of a Republican-controlled environment. And so his thought was, well, I'm going to take some of the already allocated Sandy funds from this region, and was literally working out a deal with Senate leadership to take some of the Sandy money. And I hear about this, and I'm getting worked up. And there was a moment when we all sort of crossed paths. Bob Menendez, this guy, crosses, or woman, I'm not going to tell you who it was, crossed paths in the cloakroom. And I'm there, and I watch Bob Menendez go straight New Jersey on this guy. and literally, I'm a little bit bigger than Bob, and all I had to do was go, yeah, as Bob ripped into him. There was no way one penny would be taken away from the state of New Jersey. You see, this is who Bob Menendez is. He lives and dies for this state. His heart breaks for this state. He gets up to struggle for this state. And this is my worry right now, is we're not done. Pallone works on these issues all the time. Climate change is happening. These storms are more frequent. He and I just pulled off a victory of changing some of the qualifications for Army Corps so we can do more resiliency. But you see, I am the junior senator for New Jersey. I've only got 5 years in. This guy is the leader of committees. He's ranking in positions of jurisdiction. He is positioned so much better than me to get for Jersey, to fight for Jersey. When I look to the future of this state, we need Bob Menendez for resiliency money. We need Bob Menendez to bring home the kind of money that this guy knows how to use, from healthcare funds to resiliency funds to green acres. I can go through the things we do every day. The infrastructure dollars that nobody will read about, the press not interested in, the Tiger grants, the SAFER grants. I've only got 5 years in. I'm a baby in Senate terms. I'm worried about the future because storms are going to come. They don't define us. What defines us is the champions we have, from community leaders to titans in the Senate. How we fight back against the storms, whether they're man-made or God-sent. And I'm telling you right now, if a storm is coming and I'm going to be manning the barricades, there's one guy I want with me, and that's Bob Menendez. Yeah.
That's impossible to follow. Senator, I'm just going to live every second of my life till I can earn the title from you someday of righteous badass. I will have no other goal in my life. Ladies and gentlemen, the Dean, Congressman Frank Pallone.
I don't know, all these righteous, badass, titan, dean, whatever. I don't have a lot to add, but I just want to say this. What Senator Booker said about Senator Menendez and his work is certainly true. One of the biggest problems I think that we faced in the aftermath of Sandy, and that we still face, is that we have a government in Washington, I think, I'm going to talk about Washington, that is too bureaucratic, is too not focused on exactly what it means to help people, back at home. And I don't know whether it's the Union Beach officials or it's Doug and the different residents that came forward and started the different organizations that gave us the ideas about what to be done. I think one of the things that's so outstanding about Senator Menendez is that he realized from the very beginning that we had to get to the bottom of this, and it wasn't just something that we would have a press conference about or we would talk about today. We had to be in it for the long term. We had to actually talk to people like Doug and the others that are here gathered who were affected and see what we could do to help them now and what we could do in the future, because as Senator Booker said, this is in the long term, and it's still happening now. You know, I was saying to some of you when I came in that firehouse that I was having coffee this morning with some friends, and they said, "Where are you going today?" And I said, "I'm going to Union Beach because it's the 6th anniversary of Sandy, and there's still a lot of work to be done." And they were like, "What do you mean? The people aren't back in their homes? The businesses aren't back?" I said, "No, not at all. I mean, sure, a lot are back, but there are a lot that are not." And what we've seen with Bob Menendez is, you know, and now today with this announcement by the governor, which I think is also very important and comes from what Bob has looked at and seen from all of you, is that these programs at the federal level don't work unless somebody's watching and some practical input is being brought from the citizenry. And so when you announced today, Governor, about the clawback, that's a perfect example. I'm telling you right now, I was in the office in Leonardo, in the FEMA office in Leonardo a day or two after the storm, and I remember the people coming in. Some of you heard me tell this story. And everybody was told, apply for everything. Apply for the SBA. Apply for the FEMA money. Get whatever money you can. And unfortunately, because it's, you know, not a lot of people that are working temporarily, they were told that you were eligible. The people applied. They got the money. They met all the guidelines. And how dare the FEMA or the federal government come back and say, well, you've got to get us a reimbursement. You did everything you were supposed to do. You didn't defraud anybody like some of these engineers. You did everything you were supposed to do, but we want the money back. Well, I think the governor recognizes that that's just not fair. That's not what you do. And so what you're suggesting, what you're doing today with both the, you know, the loan forgiveness and the eliminating the clawback is really important, and it's going to have an immediate impact on a lot of people here. And we had a meeting earlier today in Belford, and Bob, Senator Menendez, laid out his reforms for the flood insurance program. Everyone in the Bay Shore knows that the flood insurance program doesn't work, and he laid out the things that came from all the residents today, Doug and others, about what reforms we need to make. And that's still ongoing. That hasn't happened. We actually have a deadline for the flood insurance program coming up in a month. So we still need to work on all these things. But you do have people here, particularly Senator Menendez, but all of us as well, who are trying to take the input that you've given us and make this into something that actually works at the government level. And if we can do that, you know, then it's something that we can be proud of. We're not there. We're not there by any means. But it is really important that we do that and that we look at this in the long term and see what we can do to make people's lives better. And not only for the people that have been affected by Sandy, but in the future as well. So I just want to thank all of you for, you know, for all that you've done to provide this very important input. Thanks.
I don't know what we were thinking. We chose this location across the street for the Christie for President rally, so I apologize. Next time we'll be smarter about that. Oh dear. Couple of questions from the press, Matt.
Governor, maybe from your remarks, can I glean that you think that your predecessor sort of dropped the ball at some point in the recovery? And Senator Menendez, given events post-Sandy that you've been at with Governor Christie, I noticed that you sort of took a shot at him with the photo ops and police. When did your understanding of how he handled the storm sort of take a shift? Because these are new remarks in there.
I wasn't there, so I don't know how you want to.
Yeah, sure. So, look, you know, we worked with the governor to bring records amount of money back. And it started off all right, but then it became clear to me as I was listening to many of the people who are sitting around you that the programs weren't working to respond to the needs that they had. They were bureaucratic. They were constantly told different things, different standards. They were waiting forever to get resources. That's just simply wrong. And so, you know, it's easy when the first part, when you were all focused on the damage and the consequences and whatnot. But after that faded, there were still people who had real lives still shattered, people who had real consequences, and the state wasn't responding. Now, you know, when I bring federal monies, I need a state partner that actually helps us deliver on the federal monies. And the reality is, on the REM program, on a whole host of issues that the state was administrating, they got rid of the person who was running it after millions of dollars. So, you know, when we raised the questions from a federal level, when we drove the federal agencies that had oversight over the monies, that's when the state changed. So that's what I mean. It's easy to, you know, be, you know, at the beginning, and then disasters and consequences don't just end after a certain period of time. They continue. And many of us were still there, as we are today, still dealing with that reality. The fact that this money is still standing there, and that I'm glad that the governor is reallocating it, is incredibly important. But you would think that this would have been done before. This governor's been in office, 10 months. This should have been done before. So that's what I meant. Mayor, I'm glad to see you here. I mean, it's an extraordinary commitment to come out of your brace and come here to be with all of us today, but you've been a tremendous leader in this community, so thank you very much.
I reiterate, Mayor, thank you. Great to see you. I will tell you, one thing that we thought long and hard about is whether or not to attach any fanfare with today, because we now have to execute. So I don't want to ever be accused of the guy who took the victory lap. There are processes that we have to go through this. We need HUD. By the way, there's a process with HUD that we are embarking upon on the $50 million piece. The clawback process. You know, I'm happy we've frozen it from day one, but we want a year from now. I want to make sure people look back and say, you know what, they actually did what they said they were going to do. Sir.
Yes, Governor. The $50 million for these two programs is coming from as yet unspent Sandy federal funds. Beyond that, how much more federal Sandy funds are unspent?
So the $50 million is for the forgivable loan, 15-year forgivable loan. That does not relate to the clawback. So that's just, and we have to go through a process with HUD, which we are beginning. We have to do a public hearing here and then submit the waiver request. We have every expectation that we'll achieve what our objective is. As it relates to other unspent federal money, I actually don't know. Do any of you guys know?
Well, I don't think that's what you referenced, but let me just say briefly, because I see that Mayor Paul Smith came in. A lot of the money that's still outstanding is for the larger flood control and projects, like the one we're doing here in Union Beach. In other words, you know, we've been focusing on individuals and helping individuals, but the bottom line is a lot of that package was for Army Corps flood control projects. And a perfect example is Union Beach. And, you know, these are ongoing, right? Hundreds of millions of dollars. And I want to say that, you know, again, just like what we talked about with individuals, Mayor Smith and the Union Beach Council, you know, they've been working very hard to get the flood control project here in Union Beach. And there's one in Port Monmouth, and there's still a possibility in Highlands. So just like the individual stuff, these larger public works projects, there's still money out there that has to be spent, and there's still a lot of work that we're working with the federal government and with the governor's office to get those moving as well. And to his credit, I don't think we would have the project in Union Beach if it wasn't for Paul Smith. So I want to thank you, Paul, for all you've done.
Dan Kelly, who is a very important guy in our front office who handles, unfortunately, he and I have spent a lot of time together because among other things, he has weather as part of emergency response, as part of his remit. There's about, Dan tells me, about $1.2 billion that needs to be spent by 2022. So there was a 10-year window, but all of the monies are attached to specific programs. So there's no pile. I'd like to think there was a pile of cash sitting out there, and there isn't. Right.
Governor, off topic, I would ask you, please, could you address what happened in Pittsburgh and security for houses of worship in New Jersey going forward? And then I'd also like to ask Senator Booker, because he was the target of one of those mail bombs, to address his experience with that.
Yeah, so this is an awful, unspeakable tragedy which took place on the Sabbath on Saturday. 11 lives lost, many injured, including 4 extraordinary and brave members of law enforcement. If you look at the ages, it's jaw-dropping. 54, I believe, up to 97. Can you imagine a 97-year-old woman waking up, going to worship, and thinking in some remote possibility that she was going to get killed, shot? It's just extraordinary. It's the biggest attack on any Jewish community in the history of our country. And for me, it's even more striking as I've just come from Germany, whose history I know well, and Israel after that. So it's an awful, awful, sad chapter, a slaughter, no other way to put it. Evil was wrought on these people. We immediately, and it's not like we've gone from ground zero, so this has been, soft targets as a general matter are a high focus on our Department of Homeland Security. And I was with our director several times yesterday and twice in synagogues. We have constant, deep engagement with the 21 county emergency response and anti-terror teams. Lots of discussions on how to harden targets, whether that's through physical protection or human protection, additional security, or through other measures. And these conversations are with mayors, heads of federations, leaders in houses of worship, not just in the Jewish community. Private schools, which are religious, are also on that list. So a deep engagement, already deep, now even deeper. And it is iterative. There's an 11 a.m., I think, taking place right now. Began at 11 a.m., an all-hands conference call on this topic led by the Director of Homeland Security, Jared Maples, with all interested parties laying out that plan. I'm going to be with the press again, by the way. We're going to make some announcements on further gun safety measures this afternoon. And if I get a readout of that call today, if you're there, I'll come back to you. Corey, do you want to jump in?
Just two things real quick. In regards to whether it's the pipe bombs or the horrific manifestation of evil we saw in Pittsburgh, first recognize that pipe bomb never even made it to New Jersey. Why? Because we have first responders all over this country who are incredibly heroic. And unfortunately, we saw that when the call is there, we saw first responders in Pittsburgh storm into an active shooting situation and sacrifice themselves for the safety of us. And so the first thing we should all recognize is when we see someone in uniform, know that that's not just something that they put on. It's a commitment they make, that in a time of trouble, they stand up for us and they put their lives on the line. And that's something that I recognized when I heard that a bomb intended for my Camden office got stopped in Florida because of these folks that we often take for granted. And the second thing I just want to say is, the opposite of justice is not injustice. It is apathy, it is indifference, it's inaction. Horrific thing that happened. We are grieving right now. But why haven't we been talking as a country about a 50% rise over the last year or so of anti-Semitic actions? 50% rise in attacks. I was just on a college campus yesterday up in New Hampshire where swastikas were being painted. Swastikas in America? How many people did we lose in World War II fighting against that Nazi evil? And we're seeing a rise of those things being spray painted. We've seen a rise in hate crimes in this state, attacks on Sikh Americans, attacks on Muslim Americans. We in our country right now are seeing a rise in hate where people are feeling a license to hate people. And why? Because of their race, their religion. And so I know this is the time where people want to try to point fingers of blame, but this is a time where all of us should be accepting responsibility. That there are things going on in our country right now that do not reflect the greatness, the decency, the kindness, the grace of who we are. And we all share a responsibility, not just to react to punctuated, horrific events, whether it's black people killed in a church in South Carolina, gay people killed in a nightclub in Florida, Jewish people killed worshiping in Pittsburgh. When hate is on the rise in the United States of America, the nation that has stood against hatred, stood against violence, stood against bigotry, we all have a responsibility to confront and address this. It's not enough to say, I'm not a racist. We must be anti-racist. It's not enough to say, I'm not anti-Semitic. We must be anti-Semitism and work every day to make this nation one of more justice and more love.
change what you are doing because of this threat?
So I've recognized the real threat, not physical threats to me. The real threat in this country right now is that we are seeing a rise in, we have people hate each other just because of what political party you are. That's outrageous. I see vile things written about people just because of what party they're in. So every speech I give, and Bob and I both understand this, I try to talk about the need for our country to have a revival of civic grace. And the need for us to begin to try to create, in a more determined fashion now, a beloved community in our country. That is what is needed. I am frightened. Fear is not an unproductive emotion. It's what you do in the face of fear that defines you. But I have fear right now about the rising levels of hate being measured across the board in this country, and what that could often end up creating, the horrific outcomes that that's going to continue to create unless every single American takes responsibility and rejects that.
We do Charlie, and that'll be the last one for you again, Corey.
Both senators, you mentioned there's a license now to hate. Do you think the president's rhetoric and his behavior has given people a license to hate, or is he
I'm just going to say, I find what the President of the United States has said from his campaigning till now, much of what he's saying is repugnant. It is a violation of values. It's not a Republican thing. I hear Republican colleagues reject what comes out of his mouth. But please do not make it just about him. That is almost like saying, I'm not responsible. This is not about finding blame. This is about accepting, all of us accepting responsibility. If you don't like what someone is saying, the way to counter that is not with more hate. King said it, hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. And so I'm tired of the loop where the president says something outrageous, the press runs to me for a response. I don't want to get dragged into that loop. Who I am is not defined by who he is. I don't want to be about what I'm against, I want to be about what I'm for. What I'm for is the values of my country, written into the Declaration of Independence, that we've got to pledge to each other, as it says at the end of that, our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Every American should reread the end of the Declaration of Independence and commit themselves to pledging to other Americans, regardless of race, religion, or party, that we are going to pledge to each other our lives, like this gentleman does every day, our fortunes, but most importantly of those three, our sacred honor. If we all live with that, we're going to be okay. And the instances of hate will diminish. They'll be snuffed out by our love.
Amen, and thank you for coming.
Thank you all. Deep appreciation.